Revelation 2807. From the 10th of July 1943. Spiritual turnaround. When humanity is facing a spiritual turning point, it is always a time of tremendous earthly upheavals which spiritually and earthly only lead to chaos, which ultimately ends in complete destruction. For a spiritual change of humanity can no longer be expected when humanity has reached such chaos that it is no longer able to recognize God. Therefore God has to bring about a complete transformation, which can therefore be called a spiritual turning point, because an old period of time now comes to an end and a new one begins, that is, that one period of development replaces the other. But people believe in a spiritual turning point within humanity of the present period of development. Yet it is completely hopeless that humanity, which is so distant from God, will strive towards God again of its own accord, since it is devoid of all love and thus no longer recognizes God either. Consequently, an upward development of these people can no longer be expected. They do not remain on the same level of development either, but only develop backwards, and this must inevitably lead to complete decay, both spiritually and earthly. An unimaginable chaos is therefore the consequence, and ultimately a divine intervention, a dissolving of that which can no longer bring about higher development. The old earth must be transformed, and with it also the spiritual that is bound in form and has failed in the last test of earthly life. A spiritual turning point must occur, an end must be put to the disenchanted state, and a separation must take place between the God-desiring and the completely disenchanted human beings, so that the former do not fall prey to the latter. This point in time is no longer far away, for people's increasing lack of love draws them towards themselves, and if the thinking person recognizes the lack of love, he will also understand that God has to distance himself more and more from people because his nature is love. And since love is the original substance of creation, it has to perish as soon as God withdraws his love from it. The few people whose hearts have not yet completely grown cold are still holding back this event, but no spiritual blossoming is to be expected, and consequently no long duration until the end of this disenchanted world. The spiritual turning point is the transformation of the old to the new earth. The spiritual turning point is the departure of the departed people and the time of deepest peace, which then follows the time of tribulation on the old earth on the new earth. However, the spiritual turning point can only come after the human race of the present time, which is completely disinherited, has been swept away and can no longer oppress the few people who recognize and confess God, for now there is a human race on earth which is intimately united with God, which serves him and allows love to be the first law, which fulfills his will and does not violate divine order, which thus leads a life of peace and happiness, which is active in building up and knows no suffering and tribulation. It is a time that is completely different from the time before. But this time of spiritual change can never be granted to the people of the old earth, for they will never ever change upwards after they have sunk so far spiritually that all love has grown cold amongst them. There is no spiritual blossoming among those people who are moved neither by adversity nor tribulation to think differently and towards God. There is only a constant regression which results in spiritual and earthly chaos, which can only be ended by the complete destruction of all immature spiritual substances. However, humanity cannot be given much more time either, because it will not remain on the same low level but allow itself to drift ever further into the abyss, and the result of this has to be an inevitable disaster, for the ever-increasing distance from God determines the hour of destruction itself, because it signifies increasing heartlessness, and this means a withdrawal of divine strength of love, without which nothing can exist. And the degenerate human race's behavior also reveals its spiritual low. And it can be seen from this that the time is drawing ever closer, which signifies the end of humanity. The end time has dawned, and it will not last much longer, for the time limit God has given to the spiritual for redemption has expired. The end of a redemption period has come, and the dawn of a new redemption period signifies the time of the spiritual turning point. Amen.